You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Hey, we're back for another episode of I Think I Love My Wife, and Aubrey is so gracious. I know Liz, like, where's my husband at? Aubrey is so gracious to stick around to talk through a few more things. Like I said last time, we didn't get through the round robin questions, so we're going to start with that. And then there's a few other topics we want to talk about that I think would be great aspects to add to the conversation. And then I'll let you go because I don't want Liz coming for me. So, I'm ready for these round robin questions.
She loves you, so she's cool. She knows I'm a good person.
I gotta keep that. All right, so we're gonna do a few quick round robin questions. Give me your best answer for them, and then we'll talk about a few of them.
Let's do it.
Is it necessary for your wife to be your best friend?
For me, yes.
Was it necessary for her to be your best friend before you proposed?
Yes.
When you were dating, did you have expectations around her paying versus you paying and sequencing of when that would happen?
I was broke when we started dating, so I think that was just a reality.
Okay. From a love standpoint, is it wife over children or children over wife? Like prioritization.
Biblically, is wife over children.
For you.
I'm following the Bible on that one.
Amen. Was your wedding worth it financially?
No. But it was a great time.
Gotcha. In a range, so don't say, like, you don't have to say the exact amount. How much did you spend on your wedding?
Oof. In fairness, that's probably the one financial thing I did not track in our relationship, so I couldn't tell you. But
Was it like over 50, over 100?
Below that.
Below 100?
Yeah.
Above 50?
Below, I would say below 50.
Okay, below 50. Okay. If you had a fixed amount of money to spend on these two things, what would you spend more money on? For a bigger ring or a bigger wedding?
Bigger ring.
Quick answer.
Can I go deeper on that one?
Yeah, we'll go deep.
Okay.
We'll go deep. Joint account or separate accounts? Or both?
We've done both, actually, in our relationship.
Okay. And we're going I'll add a sub question to when you say both, is it all accounts going to the same, all funds go to the same account and then you split out, or you add to it goes to separate accounts and then you add to the big account?
We've done both.
Okay. How are you feeling about in-laws? Are we friends? They cool, we cordial, we just surviving?
I think I love my in-laws. I mean, I think it's great. I think we all get along.
Okay. True or false? Guys mature later than women do?
On the whole, I think women mature faster than men. On average.
On average, okay.
It's case by case.
Okay. How much alone time do you feel like you get outside, like sleeping, right? Do you think you get with your wife a week?
I don't know, 5-10 hours maybe.
Okay.
Well, on the weekends is more. So 24, 48, I don't know, 50 hours.
50 hours alone time with your wife?
Oh, alone time.
Yeah, alone time, like alone time. Just y'all two. I was like, 50 hours? You got kids? Where are they?
Can't you tell my perspective is that we view the kids as part of us now? Oh, between us.
You just time for yourselves.
I don't know, 5 to 10 hours if we're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Probably more like 5.
Do you think you married up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you a journey guy or a destination guy?
Journey.
Who runs the show, you or her?
I don't know. Explain that question. That's a.
Who runs the show? Like who calling the shots at the end of the day?
I don't think either one of us calls the shots. I think it just depends on if we're talking about planning a vacation, that's her. If we're talking about paying the taxes, I take the lead on that. I think
everybody else is different.
It's a situational
case
thing.
by case.
Right. I don't think one of us is running the show more than the other.
Yeah. Listen, I learn with my friends. Everybody, maybe it's an excuse when they don't want to answer. There's like, I gotta go talk to the boss. I gotta make sure she's okay with it. So maybe that's just them.
I think that's legitimate though. I think it's for us. No, there's not like one person who says we're doing this, we're doing this. I think it's definitely we both have our expertises, and I think we lead in those.
Okay. And the last question is, What's more important to you, to be loved or to be respected in your marriage? To be loved or to be respected?
To be loved is to be respected.
I mean, see, this is what I learned about you today. And over the course of our conversation, you have your attorney hat on, and yes, that is true. And you have talked about this in the context of, I would say, healthy and ideal. But there are cases where people you love you disrespect.
I don't think you love them. I think that's my core.
Oh, let me say, you can be disrespectful to them, right? Like, there's some people that, in the sense of, now we dipping, but in the sense of like, there may be some disrespect that has been, words that have been said. You love this person, but anger got the best of you, right? And there's people that like you respect, right? And so to be loved is to be respected.
I think in that case, no human is perfect. True. I mean, we go back to the Bible. There only was one perfect human. So we're going to do disrespectful things, but if we do disrespectful things, doesn't mean that we don't respect that person. That's a momentary lapse in judgment. Mm-hmm. I think if you love someone, that is encompassing of a lot of different emotions and feelings, and respect is one of those. I personally can't love anybody that I don't respect. So I hear you. It felt like a waffle, but that's the honest truth. To answer your question more directly, love, because I cannot love someone that I don't respect.
Gotcha. Got it. No, you got it. That makes sense. So I know you want to touch back to a couple things. What was that? Was it the ring? Big ring? Big? Well, yeah. So what's your take?
Go with the appreciable asset.
See, this is
that's the attorney answer.
But I will say this. Surprisingly, because I would agree, consultant and me, listen, we can put a value on that. However, I've surprisingly heard from a lot of guys that I've interviewed, there was no value you could really put. They probably agree with you that it wasn't worth how much we spent. However, they've also said that there's not like a value you can put on the wedding, like the experience you had in the wedding, they had in their wedding, because that was probably the only time that they've been in one place with so many loved ones and friends from both sides. For like a joyous thing. And it was about you. And there may be others, but there's not that many more situations where you have that many people that really care about you and fuck with you to like be in one place. What do you say to that? Still not worth the money.
No.
He's like, I'm good. He's like, I can do it out there. I can live without all the people. We can get few of them.
I still think we had the best wedding I've ever been to. I loved our wedding. But no. Look, so we talked a lot about relationships, and and so one of the bigger discussions we had in our relationship was I was really big about our engagement, not having Liz or anybody else get involved in that, because I said that's really the one time that I get to express my love to you. Everything else is about, I don't want to say it's about you, but it's more centered around your
preference,
your display. Like, for example, like the wedding is, you planned it. Mm-hmm. That's really your day. The bride is the centerpiece of the wedding, and then love and all that comes through. But the groom is not the centerpiece. Oh, yeah. So that's why I'm like, I get that, and we had a great day, and it was a lot of fun. But that's more that for us, at least, that was her thing. When we got pregnant, I mean, our journey was a little bit different. But typically, the man doesn't know that they're pregnant before the woman finds out. She gets to pick away how she gets to explain to that. So that's her moment.
The engagement was.
Their baby showers, you have co-ed baby showers, but a lot of it's celebrating the mother, and so that's why I think that's why
you hit it on the nail. I had a friend that said when you get married and you have children, and this is not a comparison because I know there are cases where women lose their identity. He said this a little jokingly. He said, "But you really lose your identity." Mm-hmm. He said, "I become someone's father, then I'm someone's wife before I'm who I am." Mm-hmm. And I think he said it like in a joking way, but also a realization that no, you take a back seat to a lot. Mm-hmm. And this is not a discount what women do. This is just in isolation. Like when you think about us, and I don't think that we think about that. Like you talked about responsibility earlier. Like your needs and priorities, whether you want to call it being the head of the household or leadership, is you come last. And not to say you don't take care of yourself, but when you think about what you make sure everything else is good first. And that's my argument that I have with people when they say head of household, or you have the conversation fighting. And I'm like, head of household isn't fun. No one, like, yes, there are calls you get to make, but that is not the bulk of what happens as a head of household. There's a lot of worry. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of, I need to make sure that these things are good before anything else. And there's sacrifice to me that comes with head of household, And so I'm always baffled when people are like rushing to be head of household. I'm like, are you really rushing to make all these sacrifices?
What's funny? You mentioned about head of household. I don't really find in a lot of the modern relationships that that in proximity to me, there really is a head of household. There may be someone who makes a little bit more than the other, but I find that decisions are usually in the more healthier relationships. Things are made in tandem, that each individual kind of identifies where they are good at leading and they lead in that way. So it's more of a representative democracy than a dictatorship.
True, and I'm not saying. See, and that's so. I'm not saying that head of household should mean dictatorship. I think old school views of it is very dictator-like.
I think that's the distinction I was drawing.
Yeah, I do think.
And that's saying that you felt that way, by the way.
For sure. I do think that there are going to be times where, hey, we just don't agree. Like, and again, these are fewer, but there will be moments where someone has to make a call. And the way I'm trying to live is like my modern traditional life is like in those nuances. Yes, in everything that we are doing, I want your input. That's why I'm with you. I'm taking that in consideration. However, for the scenarios where we just don't agree, I'm going to make the decision. And that decision may be, we're going to go with what you want to do because this is an area that I trust you in, that you have more expertise in. But Diddy said it, and he ain't the best person to quote, but it stuck with me. There only can be one pilot on a captain on a ship, right? There's only one captain. At certain places, you have to make a tough call. I'll call it that way.
I can only speak for my relationship. Yeah. You go back to data driven. I feel like most of the time the answer reveals itself.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And so it's not like I'm making the call saying I will or I won't. I feel like that happens more. They're probably less than 5% of the chances that happens. I feel like more times than not, to your point, is sit down and it's like, well, this one just makes more sense. Or I don't want the fight. I'm going to stand down on this one. Someone else may stand on that one.
But data may tell you the truth, but data ain't going to make the decision though sometimes because someone's desire, so to speak, or preference for something may trump what data says is what you should do. Not saying like, oh, it's like catastrophic, right? But data may say, hey, this is a better decision for us, but someone really wants to do it this way, right? Let's say something minimal. Let's say driving somewhere. Like all the data say you should go this way to get there quicker. And you have a way you want to go, right? Your feelings towards it for going this way for whatever reason may trump what the data tells you is the best route to take, right? It doesn't mean it's wrong, but there are scenarios where I'm trying to say is that the data may give you a different answer, but because the emotions are there, probably the best way I'm saying, that you have to defer to some of that in some cases.
I hear you. I still think it's a situational thing. I feel like more times than not, I feel like in a healthy relationship, you're both giving and taking. So I don't think it's like one person's like at the end of the day is going to say, well, I'm doing this. Because what also happens, I've seen happen when that happens is the other person's like, screw you, I'm not doing that. And then you wind up having a whole host of other issues. I do think there are relationships I have seen and healthy ones where someone ultimately tends to make the final calls. Mm-hmm. I'm saying in the vast majority of the ones that I'm privy to, it usually feels a little bit more like, to your point, whatever the metric is that you decide is, are we trumping data? Are we aligning with data? Is it because I gave it the last time, I'm giving it? Whatever the metric is, I find it's a little bit more balanced versus
for sure. I think
there being like just one more dominant personality that
I think
muscle still gets their way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the day-to-day, it's give and take. They're over time or in the immediate, near term, you find out who's good at what, or the things that you don't want to do or care to make a decision on. It's not that serious for you. I think a lot of guys, there are a lot of things that are not that, whatever you want, I can make it work, But when it's on the margins, right, where those things may come up. And it's like, how do you reconcile that perspective with, like we talked about the Bible, right? And what the Bible says around submission and leading and, let's call your wife being your helpmate. Like, how do you reconcile all that?
I'll give you two examples. One, parenting. If you're not really involved with the day-to-day of the kid, like if your job is you don't spend as much time with them, you're focused on working, or you don't really know how the mechanics of the house goes, then ultimately the person who spends the most time with the child, who spend the most time cooking and cleaning and changing diapers or talking with the nanny or whatever it is, dealing with the child care, whatever it is, if you get to an impasse, they may have a higher say because ultimately they're the one that's most affected.
Yeah.
So, or buying a car is another example that you may come up to, or a house in a relationship. Who's going to be the person that's going to be driving this car the most? Like, so unless it's an issue of affordability or something else, you're in an impasse, you're going to go with the person that's going to be driving the vehicle. So I think that's more of where I see it happening in a relationship, is who's the person that's most impacted versus, like you said, they're making if it gets down to an impasse, saying, well, we need to go this way because this impacts me more.
No, for sure. And
screw logic.
No, for sure. I agree with that. And I think that is a telltale sign of leadership, right? You can be a leader. Doesn't mean like how many CEOs are making the key decisions. They have a COO that's making the bulk of decisions, a CFO. So I think there's a misnomer in the fact that the person that's the head is the one in control. You know, oftentimes we are being given and told, hey, we made these decisions and this is how we move it, right? And so to me, I don't know that I always see and hear the term head of household and like control, you know. I think to the degree that it triggers people in talking about that and it becomes this big topic is like, does not compare to the instances in which someone may have to say, well, we don't see eye to eye here, and I have to like make this decision. Like I feel like they're not on the same level. And I agree with you that a good leader knows that. Like, hey, you do this. It's in my best interest to like submit. Guys, submit to what you want because you are well equipped. You have the skills. You have the interest to make it. To me, if you can't see that and you just want power, like right, that's to me it's where it's like, are you trying to be a dictator just because you can, or are you being a leader because you're doing what's best for the unit? You know.
I think that's one of the things I learned the most as being an adult. To your point, authoritarianism doesn't really exist. Like even in politics, the president of the United States doesn't run everything. Congress controls things, and he's got a Supreme Court that can override it. In a corporation, you may be CEO, but if you're a publicly traded company,
shareholders, the board,
you got the board, so you can't just enact whatever you want.
Some might say the chief of staff is probably the more powerful person in the
because they know what's going on.
They control everything, right?
So I think that goes that way in relationships too. I think that misnomer in society take relationships out of it. That you have to lead. That's just not the way this country is set up. Mm-hmm. So to your point, that's why I personally don't like the term head of household. I think that is outside of it being a tax question, mm-hmm. I think is a relic of.
It's a tax question, but
it's a relic of
where does it stem from, right? Like our history, and so that's in the Bible and all that, and so that they pulled it from there to do a tax question, but it stems from that, right? Which is very archaic in terms of where it was derived from. I like to talk about it because it's triggering for people,
right? And
I think when people are feeling things, they either stop listening and defend, or they really engage. And to me, in some ways, I want to like, how do we change our feelings around what that means and how that looks? Like, to me, when I see a head of household, I don't see dictator, right? I know people, those are, connotations, right? But I see like sacrifice. I see all the hard stuff that people don't talk about. I see someone that's willing to say, hey, I don't have this. I know you know this. I'm deferring to you because you answering or you taking care of that puts us in a better position, right? It's not ego driven. And so that's why I like to use that term, because I think it elicits a lot of thought that people probably haven't sat down and really thought about at the core. What does that mean for them? They just have like the kind of the word that people throw around at the surface level that they've heard growing up, or society driven meaning of it.
I think some people need to be led. I think that's okay. I think the term, I think it goes back, I don't know if I said it before, but I think it goes back to what are your needs in the relationship? Mm-hmm. Some people need, man or woman, need somebody to say, I need someone to guide me. I need someone to ultimately make the call. I need someone to lead. I'm looking for leadership. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I find with a lot of professional relationships, now I think this is a newer relic of the past 20, 30 years. I find that's is typically a little bit more balanced, but because the response.
When you say professional relationships, what do you mean?
Where there's two couples that two people in a relationship who are working,
Gotcha,
who are
okay.
working professionals.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think the reason why is because the responsibilities are balanced.
Yeah.
There's one person, to your point, where you're saying that's saying, look, I'm sacrificing, I'm in charge, I'm taking on I'm the sole breadwinner of the financial responsibility. Then yes, there is going to be some leadership within that. So yes, you're going to have to lead in certain ways, just like the other partner who's not taking on the financial burden is probably managing the home, and they may have more say so over operations of the household. The reason why I answered it in a more blended way is because I'm finding there's less of at least in my orbit, there are less of those type of relationships, and the more relationships with people, or they're two professionals, so they're both contributing to the household. So it doesn't mean one person is solely owning one task, so responsibilities have to be dispersed. So there is no one person who can make one final call, because there's not one person who's solely looking at one aspect.
Well, for sure.
Everything's blended. So to your point, I think it's not that the word gives me pause. I just find in my orbit a lot of, and I'm prefacing by saying my orbit because
I get it.
There are a lot of different orbits out there,
sure.
and I don't want to speak for those. I think the blended model is the healthier model, because no one person can control it all.
Yes, no, I get it, and that makes sense, and I would say I see that too. But the reality is, we can say those folks in those orbits are blessed, right? And the reality is I wouldn't say generally, but probably more typical than not, that someone is carrying the financial burden more so than another person. And it can be man or woman, especially when we see women in education rates, or education attainments, professions, that they are attaining more than men. And so when you think about those attitudes and perspectives, the question that comes to mind is it financially driven, or is there a perspective that should be had, and I should lightly in quotes, should be had regardless of who's doing what?
I think it goes to, I think it just depends on what are you trying to lead in. Going back to the example, if you're the sole provider of the household, the financial provider of the household, you're going to have a lot of say so over a lot of things, because you know how far the money goes. Or you know what you're able to bring in and replenish. But on the flip side, if the other partner who's not working is in charge of paying the bill, actually, you know what's a good example of the show? Everyone loves Chris. Yeah, everyone hates Chris. They got into that dynamic a lot of time. Julius, the father, would have been considered the head of the household because he was the one who worked the most. But when you dug deeper into the mechanics, Rochelle actually controlled a lot of times, because I remember one time there was an episode where Julius was fussing about how much they were spending and telling his wife Rochelle to tip her back, or why don't you pay the bills a certain way? She was like, you make the money, but I pay the bills, and I have to pay the bills these ways to make things work. So even in that dynamic, Rochelle typically would defer to Julius. He got the big piece of chicken, or he got this certain place, but he knew even then when to defer to her, even though he was the sole breadwinner. He was saying, you need to stop spending. She was like, okay, this is how I make it all work. And you could go do more. If you could take control and do it your way, but you're going to have to work a whole lot harder to do it.
No, so it reminds me a little bit of Fences too. Denzel Washington screenplay that Denzel was in. A little bit more nuanced, but he made all the money. He probably was a little bit more controlling and dictator-like. But when it came to finances, his wife managed all that. He just said, I make the money, I give it to you. I don't,
Right.
And he didn't know what happened, but he just knew it was going to be taken care of, and he deferred that to her. So I think all that to say there's nuance, right, in everything.
This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description.
I want to pivot a bit because I know I've had you for a while, and I want to make sure that we talk about fatherhood.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
It's been one of the greatest journeys of my life.
Say more.
I didn't think it's cliche to say you didn't think your love could be able to expand as much, but I think it goes back to, I think we've had a theme of selflessness that we've talked about today. I think when you allow yourself to have another human put their body excrement, their poop, their pee all over you, and you're not upset or disturb your sleep, and they're still the most beautiful thing.
Disrespect you all kinds of ways.
Every which freaking way, and you still all you want to do is just be around them. I think there is a beauty within that, and it's definitely a biological connection that this person, that I just feel this desire, this need to be able to protect you and to want to love you and to make sure you experience as little pain on this earth as possible.
That's dope. That's dope. One of the stories I keep hearing is there's no way to describe the joy that you receive or feel as a parent when you're picking up your child from daycare and they see you and there's like a mad dash. There's no way to describe that feeling.
I've had some terrible days at work over the past year. Not every day, but I've had, days where I just, you felt beat down or, things didn't go your way. And the minute you walk in the door and you see that little one, my son usually is the first to greet me just by happenstance. For that time, it just goes away. There was actually one day I was dreading going to do something. I was walking out the door. I was dreading a meeting, and my daughter, before I walked out the door, she jumped into my arms and she figured out how to kiss. She just kissed me and just leaned her head on my shoulder. It just gave me a power to go through that day. I was like, you know what, this is important, but I know I have the love of 3 people when I come back home. So whatever happens out there, we'll just let it say out here. I just want to come home and be with these people.
That's dope. That's dope. We talked about before you guys having conversations around, timing to have kids, making a decision to go get tests to see what the situation was to inform that timing, given some of the other things that you wanted to do, like buy a house and personal decisions and I'd say romantic decisions you guys wanted to make. What was that journey like for you guys once you guys, took the whatever exams and procedures to understand what your situation looked like?
I want to make sure I'm answering. Can you rephrase that for us?
Just in the sense of like when you think about your journey, like to have the kids that you have now, like what was that like for you guys?
I think it was I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for Liz. It was more about providing the stability, make sure I had the tools and resources to, one, make me most efficient, to be able to provide and make sure they're comfortable, had their needs met, but then also making sure that they had a stable household that they could grow and thrive in. So I was comfortable with the love that Liz and I could provide, because at that point I had vetted all that and, getting to marriage. But it's like, how can we build that infrastructure? So for me, it was, how can we get stable housing? We had been moving around a lot, so how can we focus on purchasing a house so the kids have a place where they could grow? How can we make sure we have the salaries that we can afford diapers or food or daycare? Or if I was given the benefit of not having a children, being able to be more selective when we want to have it, let's take that blessing and make sure I had what they need, so when they got there it could be as smooth for them and us as possible. And that's where I was focused on.
Yeah. And then, so you guys established that you're prepared, you feel ready. What does the journey to conceive look like for you guys?
It started with testing. So we, my wife and her brilliance say, you know what, let me just get checked out just to make sure there was nothing wrong. And she discovered that she had fibroids, very common amongst African American women, especially of West Africans, as she is. So she got that taken care of. Well, that took a number of months and very invasive procedures. Then once we started, we recognized that it was regular intercourse wasn't doing the trick. We kept getting negative pregnancy tests. So she, again, her wisdom, said, you know what, we probably should go get some help. So we started talking to fertility specialists and started figuring out our options. And from there, it became an exploration of what are the most cost effective, like what can we afford, what is insurance going to pay for, ways to be able to make sure that we're maximizing our opportunity to get pregnant. And it took well over a year and about 4 cycles of IVF, and we were eventually able to conceive our twins.
Actually, I can imagine that journey. And I just saw your kids at first. Someone's birthday party recently, so
shout out to them.
So it was amazing to witness part of the journey. I wouldn't say I've known you guys for the whole journey, but part of it to then see these 2 toddlers just moving around, right? What is that journey like? That people hear like, oh, we went through X cycles of IVF, right? And not knowing like what does that mean to someone's like body or emotional, how taxing that might be emotionally or physically on the woman primarily, then also on the couple.
It's I think having a child in general is probably one of the most things that could bring a couple together, or it could tear it apart. So especially when you're having to do something as nuanced as we have to go through fertility specialists to do that, because there are a lot of things that are just outside of your control. So for example, if you're doing timed intercourse, which is one of the first steps before you get to IVF, that's when the woman's tracking her ovulation cycle, and you got to be able, for those who may not know, and it means you have to do it at this time, at this moment. So that can take a lot of spontaneity and fun out of it for a lot of people. It could put pressure on people to perform at both people when you just don't really feel like it. So then when you move more to the more medicated version, there are a lot of checkup appointments in there. So it's a lot of time involved. There's humility because you're constantly being poked and prodded. There are procedures for the women. There are procedures for the men where you have to give semen samples or semen deliveries. And you know, depending on where you do it, it could be a very awkward location.
Not my usual spot.
It's like, this is so you have to be humble within that. You have the woman's body's going through all kinds of changes. She's being pumped up with massive amounts of hormones. So you have to recognize your partner is going through a physiological change and may exhibit things that be outside of their personality. And you have to anchor yourself in that. And then it's the emotional part of when we have to deal with losses of the healing and the trauma of starting back up again, and being as a man, and this is not even just a male thing because there are other same-sex couples that go through this too, as the non-pregnant party, being able to be supportive of the other part, finding your own emotions and putting them almost secondary, but making sure you're not losing yourself, because your goal is to make sure they're supported because their body went through the change. They're dealing with the physical loss and the emotional loss and the preparation to start all over again. So you got to find the ways to balance your emotions within helping them navigate that. And then all the way through, when you hopefully get to the successful point of conceiving, helping them manage, through the ups and downs and of both pregnancy and postpartum pregnancy, which a lot of people also often forget about.
Yeah, I can just imagine there's like big milestones, I would imagine, through the process. And with each milestone that you have to reach, there's also a likelihood of failure. And as you get closer in that journey, and if you experience failure, the pain that comes with that, emotionally, physically, right, to restart. He talked about healing. I wonder, and I asked this question recognizing there's a lot that women deal with. So I don't ask this discounting it. I think there are a lot of platforms that talk about it.
Right.
But I really wanted to focus on the space as a man, or to your point, the non-participating party in the relationship. How do you navigate your personal feelings, right? Because there's pain, there is emotional. It is an emotional taxing experience, or can be, with the fact that you have to be strong. Like, part of your role in it is to be strong for the person that you, for your words, being poked and prodded and experiencing these changes. Like, how do you find balance in that?
Oh, I'd love to dive deeper on that, and I'll do it quickly on two aspects of it. I would say on the pre side, like for when you're trying to conceive, if that's your journey, and then postpartum. So I'll start with the pre. I think with the pre side, I think it's important to find your village. And if you're fortunate enough to have friends, your boys, female friends, if that's the thing to make sure even your relationship's cool with that, whatever, your parents, your siblings, whoever, find your village, a person that's trusted that you can go to and you can talk about your feelings that can help guide you. If you don't have that person, obviously you mentioned therapy, and there are other things you may want to have that anyway. I think it's good to have a way to navigate your feelings, people you could talk to if needed, to navigate through that. I think self-realization is also important, to always constantly check in within yourself, to do your best to know yourself and to realize where you may not be feeling your best self, or you may be struggling with certain aspects, and figure out how to navigate that. And also communicate with your partner. Let your partner know when you're struggling. You don't have to completely take them out the picture. Know what their capacity is to handle. Don't be afraid to at least tell them and see if they can meet your needs. On the postpartum side, the reason why I separated that is I think we talked about earlier, I think with more fathers taking on more responsibility with nighttime, with changing diapers and just being more active as parents. I thought about it. It kind of hit me one day. I was like, man, I don't feel like I'm performing at peak 100% Aubrey. And you hear about women talk about their postpartum journeys being well over a year. Like postpartum is not just within the first couple of months. It can last months, if not, years down the line from having a kid. And I don't have any medical backing of this, but I wonder to a much, 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 much smaller level, as fathers are becoming more active in this, do they feel some kind of drop off where they're not feeling at their peak because they're not getting the same amount of sleep, or their time is more compressed, and they're dealing with a lot of changes? How are they responding to that? And what resources, whether through shared fathers, working with other fathers in your community, going to Fathering Me classes, parental care, whatever, or therapy, whatever, but to make sure you're not falling, you're not losing yourself within that, because then that can start to affect your ability to be a good father and be a good husband.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just absorbing the information or in your perspectives, because in my mind, just supporting your partner through pregnancy can be taxing. And if you say, hey, outside world being the same in terms of the toll that it's taking on you, responsibilities, now you're being demanded of more, rightfully so, right? Mm-hmm. Now you are in this journey of IVF and all the things that come with it, and you're being tugged on even more. Like, your tank is your tank.
Right.
And so if you're now in this experience of more is being required of you in a capped amount of, where you can give time, energy, and you also have to feed yourself, I'm wondering, like, how did you, when you think about your experience, navigate when, I'm sure that it levels, right? I'm sure there's like ups and downs. When you were getting to points where, hey, I need to do something for me, or I can't be what you need me to be right now until I do whatever I need to do to then get back to doing that, versus like trying to knuckle through it.
I don't know if I found that balance. I'm a knuckle through kind of guy in general. So for me, my struggle is I'm passionate about what I do for a living. I like to think I have a relentless drive within that. So there's a lot of effort and energy that goes towards my day job. Mm-hmm. And now I'm having to balance that with a relentless energy and passion that I have for my night job. So I actually have found that I've actually lost a lot of the other aspects of myself. And then blending that and giving Liz what she needs, and my parents or everywhere else. So I found I have lost a lot of the personal things that I've enjoyed, a lot of the social projects and things that are core to me. I just don't have the bandwidth for as I like to anymore. Watching sports, or playing video games, or going to play exercising. They're just not things that I'm able to get to. Is hanging out with friends. I feel like I'm constantly wanting to hang out. I mean, you've hit me up about things.
I know how my dads are, so I keep inviting them. I don't take no hard feelings when you can't come, because I understand when you just, hey, I just need I would love to go, but the time I could do other stuff that's a higher priority, it just piles up. It's like being on vacation from work. You're like, yeah, I need to go, but the work's gonna, so I'll keep inviting you.
I appreciate that. I think that's actually a way you talk about how you can support your parental friends. Keep inviting them. Yeah. They're probably not saying no because they don't want to go. They literally just can't make it work. But to that end, though, is what I've also been some of the best advice I got. My boss actually just gave me this the other day. He has 3 children. Mm-hmm. And when I told him I had to leave work for a few minutes to take our kids to the doctor because they were sick, and he was like, you probably haven't gotten a lot of sleep this week, because I know the hours you have to work at night, and then they're sick. Mm-hmm. So when you finally could go to bed, because I'm seeing the emails come through when you send, so when you finally could go to bed, they're up, you're not resting. Yeah. And he said, brother, it gets better. And I think that's the thing that I've rested on, that everything is a season. Mm-hmm. The first couple years, especially when you have multiples, is going to be a little taxing, but it gets better. And I've seen parents get to 3, 4, 5, and they start to find themselves and get their life back, or elements of their life back, and find the balance. So,
well, I appreciate you for sharing. Just a couple quick questions as we wrap up. Why did you get married? When you think about you and just independent of Liz, like, why did you get married?
A life's not worth living without having anybody to share anything with.
I like that. What was your biggest misconception about marriage?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know if I guess the amount of time you have to take them on dates, or I don't.
The dating court never stops. Yeah.
Now, I mean, usually when I ask this question, they have one or the other, but you have both. What advice would you give your son as it pertains to dating and relationships when he's, 20 years?
To put more clarity on the last question too, as I actually find myself going out less than I thought we went out with more. Advice for my son, I think find out what matters most to you, then find out how that fits into a relationship and target a person that maximizes on both of those things.
Okay. And then on the flip side of that, what advice would you give to your daughter as it pertains to dating and marriage 20 years from now, when she's of age and out I won't say outside, but she's exploring?
The same philosophy, but find someone that will treat and respect you and make sure no harm comes to you.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I want to respect your time. I know I've taken a lot of it. I want to thank Aubrey for coming out. Give yourself a round of applause. I'm all about your affirmations. Yeah, even with the kids, so we got to do a round of applause. But I appreciate it, man. I learned a lot. I feel like I took a lot out of this. I hope you did too. Any final words you want to, say? Any thoughts that you have before we wrap up?
Anything you heard me say, I'm not perfect. So this is my half-assed approach to relationships. Do what makes you happy. Do what makes sense to you and your partner. Just find joy in life and find a joy in another person.
Gotcha. Well, I hope this podcast makes you happy. I hope it brings you a little bit of joy. Stay tuned. We'll have more people with this great perspective and insight as Aubrey coming through. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow on Instagram at Think Love Wife. Until next time, you know what it is. I hope the conversation keeps going.